Alright guys, so I found this video and it's got a lot of updates on the stuff that Chris Watts has been saying behind the prison walls and some more stuff about Nicole Kessinger. So it's worth watching and I want to react to this guy with you guys. Those of you that follow my channel know that I am deeply devoted to this Chris Watts case. I believe that Nicole Kessinger should be held accountable for her role in her planning of this crime. I believe that she's a lot more involved than people say. So let's get into the video and we'll react to it together.
Been 7 years since the world watched a smiling husband beg for the safe return of his wife and children, knowing they were already gone. But behind the walls of a Wisconsin prison, Chris Watts is still talking, still writing, and still finding ways to be seen. Now in October 2025, new letters, phone calls, and claims are leaking out, each one darker than the last. And this time, the story isn't about what he did, it's about what he's still doing. Before we go further, make sure you're subscribed, because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew about this case. Take a second to drop your location in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, and let's step inside the walls that still echo his name.
When the gates of Colorado's correctional system first closed behind Chris Watts, guards already understood the danger his presence created. He was not an ordinary inmate. Inside prison culture, men convicted of harming their own families, especially children, are treated as outcasts. The first week confirmed their fears. Insults echoed from nearby cells, food was thrown in his direction during movement, threats slid under his door on scraps of paper. Each day, the tension climbed until officers could no longer dismiss it as routine hostility. An incident in late 2018 changed everything. During a brief transfer through a common hallway, another prisoner broke from the line and tried to strike him before staff intervened. The encounter lasted only seconds, but it proved what every officer already knew: his life inside that system could never be secured. After weeks of review, officials arranged a quiet relocation. On the night of December 3, 2018, he was placed on a transport flight under heavy guard and removed from Colorado entirely. His new home became Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin.
I don't think it matters where he's at. This thing is so national and people are so angry about this that he deserves what's coming to him. And wherever he goes, any prison in America or around the world for that matter, he's gonna get what's coming to him.
A facility known for housing inmates who cannot safely exist in standard population. The move was framed publicly as administrative, but those familiar with the process call it what it was: a last resort to keep him alive. From the moment he arrived, his daily world shrank to a few concrete rooms, a metal door, and a schedule built to prevent contact. He eats alone, exercises alone, and moves only under escort. Within those limits, survival means invisibility. Even there, whispers followed him. Former staff and correspondents from inside describe an environment where his name still sparks resentment. Threats have surfaced in intercepted notes and overheard conversations, small reminders that reputation travels faster than distance. Though no further physical attacks have been confirmed, every correctional officer knows the risk remains. Safety in Dodge is relative. All it takes is one lapse, one open gate at the wrong time. For Watts, this existence is both protection and punishment. The transfer may have saved his life, but it also erased every trace of ordinary human contact. Days pass in silence, broken only by the shuffle of boots and the mechanical click of locks. Former inmates who endured similar conditions describe it as a slow disconnection from reality, a state where thought becomes the only company left. Over years, that isolation reshapes behavior, dulls empathy, and sometimes fuels delusion. By 2025, those close to the case say he rarely speaks directly to others, yet his thoughts reach beyond the cell in another form. Letters, phone logs, and monitored messages show that while the world outside may have forgotten him, he has not forgotten the world.
The world outside has definitely not forgotten you, Chris Watts. We are all watching you.
What began as protection evolved into a stage from which he can still perform, hidden from sight, yet impossible to erase. The transfer ended the danger of physical attack, but not the unrest within him. Behind every sealed door, he's searching for a new way to be heard. And soon, those words will leak beyond the razor wire, reshaping everything people thought they knew about his silence.
You want to figure this out before I can do it. And they're like, time frame, but also like not rushing anything. And I just want to get out of here. I know that God has a plan for me, and it's not, to be in prison right now, but...
The first sign that Chris Watts still wanted to be heard came through a phone line. After years of silence, one monitored call between him and his attorney drew attention inside Dodge Correctional. The audio, later summarized in internal records, captured a voice that no longer sounded fearful, just restless. He complained that days blurred together, that the light in his cell never seemed to fade, and that he was tired of being here. He never mentioned regret or accountability. He spoke only of exhaustion, of wanting the noise in his head to stop.
Does he really think that he's ever going to see the light of day again? Really? He's that egotistical. Really?
For investigators who later reviewed the transcript, that phrasing stood out. He wasn't mourning what happened. He was mourning his own discomfort. Those who study long-term confinement say that isolation often reveals a person's truest instinct. In his case, the instinct was control. Even after years without contact, he tried to steer the conversation, careful pauses, deliberate tone, and questions designed to gauge how the outside world still viewed him. When the attorney steered toward legal limits, he redirected to personal suffering. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The performance hadn't stopped, it had simply moved to a new stage. The call surfaced quietly online months later, stripped of context and shared in fragments. Some listeners claimed they heard remorse, others heard manipulation disguised as fatigue. The debate itself became part of his strategy. Every replay kept his name circulating, giving him a presence far larger than his cell allowed. Inside Dodge, calls like these are strictly timed. The signal cuts the moment the limit ends, leaving a hollow tone in place of conversation. Staff say that after each call, he sits motionless for a long stretch before returning to the same routine. It's not grief they notice, it's calculation, as if he's reviewing every sentence he just spoke. What he never says in those calls speaks louder than anything recorded. He doesn't mention his victims. He doesn't talk about the life he ended or the families who still grieve. His focus remains on himself, his conditions, his fatigue, his desire to start again somewhere else. It's a pattern investigators call selective remorse, emotion reserved only for the person who caused the harm. Yet the call achieved what he wanted. Within weeks, his relatives began speaking publicly again, echoing his language of forgiveness and second chances. Whether that shift started with them or with the man behind the phone line remains unclear. What is clear is that he still knows how to move people without ever leaving his chair. And when the calls end, his family picks up the cause.
No matter what, we believe you and we want you to fight, no matter what. If a lawyer comes up to you, take it. Take it. Okay, we'll slow down. We'll slow down. We'll slow down. I know we only got a few minutes. I know. I want to get everything we need to get out to you.
This is Joanne. I love you and I believe in you wholehearted.
We all do. We all do. And you were railroaded. Oh my goodness.
Can you believe this family? I mean, I'm sorry, I have 3 daughters, and if one of my daughters killed their family, I don't think I could ever speak to them again. I mean, love is one thing, but I mean, gosh, I cannot believe that they actually think that he deserves to walk free. I cannot believe that. This family, I mean, no wonder the son is so messed up.
We love you. We love you, Chris. We love you. We love you more than anything. Okay?
We're all right here.
We're right here, and don't you give up.
The same week that his phone call with his attorney surfaced, another conversation drew attention inside Dodge Correctional. This one came from his family. In the recording, their voices carry warmth, the kind that tries to cross distance and steel. His mother tells him, no matter what they say, we believe you. If a lawyer ever reaches out, take it. Don't stop fighting. Her tone isn't pleading, it's instructive, an emotional push disguised as comfort. That call reveals a different side of the case, a family unwilling to surrender to finality. They speak to him as though the verdict were only temporary, as if another hearing might appear out of nowhere. Their words build a bridge between hope and denial. They tell him to stay ready, to trust that someone will eventually see things the right way. Inside his small cell, he listens quietly, repeating short phrases of agreement, never promises, never emotion, just enough to keep the connection alive. Over the years, these calls have become routine. Each one begins with affection and ends with strategy. They ask about his health, his meals, then pivot to talk of lawyers willing to look things over. None of those names ever surface publicly, but the pattern stays the same. They remind him that the world still contains possibilities, even when the system does not. For a man stripped of control, that reminder functions like currency. Those who have reviewed portions of these recordings say the tone has changed subtly since his early days in custody. The sorrow that once filled his parents' voices has hardened into resolve. They no longer dwell on the crime itself, they focus on logistics, letters to officials, case numbers, procedural language learned from years of watching legal dramas. Their hope isn't built on evidence, it's built on momentum. The more they talk, the more real the idea of freedom begins to sound. For Watts, those calls serve two purposes. They ease the loneliness that defines his existence, and they reinforce a narrative he's careful never to contradict. When his mother tells him to keep fighting, he agrees softly, saying, "I will." To outsiders, it's a moment of family devotion. To those who analyze his behavior, it's another instance of control, the subtle ability to keep people orbiting around him. Each exchange ends the same way, with his parents assuring him they love him and believe in him completely. When the call disconnects, the silence that follows feels heavier than before. In that silence lies the truth. His family may still be fighting for him, but their faith in a legal miracle is the only freedom he's likely to know. But even as they plan his release, he's crafting a different escape, one that doesn't require leaving the prison at all. That other escape he's been building isn't through a courtroom or a parole board, it's through affection. By 2020, letters arriving for Chris Watts had shifted from sympathy to something far more personal. Women from different parts of the country began writing with a kind of devotion usually reserved for romance.
Oh my goodness. Please tell me, who in the world would be writing this man in any kind of love way? I mean, I have nothing but despise for this man. Seriously, why? I just don't understand. They must be sad, lonely women that have no heart. I just don't get it. You guys tell me what you think, please.
They told him they understood him, that they saw goodness others had missed, that love could begin again even in confinement. At first, he answered politely, signing each page with thanks. Then his tone changed. He started asking about their families, their dreams, whether they believed in second chances.
Stay the heck away from my family. That's what I'd be saying.
Those monitoring his mail noticed that his responses were longer now, carefully written, emotionally measured, almost flirtatious. To them, it was clear, Watts wasn't just receiving attention, he was pursuing it. Over the next few years, the correspondence grew into what staff quietly called his other life. Several women wrote weekly, sending photographs, describing plans for visits once travel restrictions lifted. One exchange referenced a fresh start, his phrase for the life he claimed to want after release, though he will never leave Dodge. In his mind, that didn't matter. Through letters, he could construct a home that required no address. Prison records confirm he spends hours each week reading and responding to personal mail. The letters have become a ritual, paper folded with precision, handwriting neat, tone deliberate. Observers say he chooses his words like currency, kind enough to invite sympathy, vague enough to avoid contradiction. He never mentions his conviction directly. Instead, he writes about growth, structure, and the promise of loyalty.
I don't know why he thinks he deserves any loyalty. But you know who doesn't write him? Nicole Kessinger. And she's gone. Nobody knows where she is. And I think that's because she was involved. I think she orchestrated this whole thing, and he was just a weak, pathetic man that followed along and did as he was told. And she deserves what she's got coming to her, and I pray that happens.
To outsiders, it seems impossible that a man serving multiple life sentences could attract anyone, yet this fascination follows a known pattern. Some people are drawn to notoriety, others to the illusion of fixing what the world condemns. In that space, Watts has learned to thrive. Each new admirer becomes a mirror reflecting a version of himself he prefers, the thoughtful partner, the misunderstood man, the one still capable of love. By 2025, those close to the case say he refers to one of his regular correspondents as his future companion. He talks about marriage as though it were a goal within reach, describing how he would build trust slowly and start a family again one day. For investigators reviewing his mail, that language is what disturbs them most. It isn't longing, it's repetition. The same domestic fantasy that once ended in tragedy is now rewritten on paper. What makes this even more unsettling is how ordinary it sounds. The sentences could belong to any dating profile, any hopeful message between two strangers. But these come from a man serving life, and from women who see romance in redemption. To him, each exchange is proof that his story isn't over. To them, it's evidence that love can conquer anything. Both are wrong. The search continues, letter by letter, each envelope sealing a small illusion of freedom. And even in love, he can't resist rewriting the past. The letters that once promised romance soon turned into something else. Hidden between polite replies and day-to-day chatter, Chris Watts began rewriting the story that put him behind bars. By late 2023, her name returned, Nicole Kessinger, a name many believed had vanished from his vocabulary years earlier. He wrote about her cautiously at first, slipping her into sentences about regret and bad influences. Then his tone sharpened. He described her as a turning point, someone who changed everything, hinting that her role was larger than anyone realized. Each new letter edged closer to accusation, but never enough to be called a claim. To readers unfamiliar with the evidence, it sounded persuasive. To investigators who've seen this before, it sounded like a man rehearsing denial in slow motion. In reality, the record remains unaltered. Court documents from 2018 show that Chris Watts accepted full responsibility for the murders of his wife and children. Nicole Kessinger was never charged or named as a suspect.
Yet. Why do you guys think that he is protecting her, or was protecting her? Now that she's not coming around, or writing him, or having anything to do with him, she's all of a sudden back in the spotlight in his eyes. So he's willing to talk now, supposedly. I don't think we'll ever get the truth from him, exactly. But there's going to be more updates in this case very soon.
She told investigators that she ended contact with him once she learned the truth. Those facts have stood unchanged through every appeal and every rumor. But in his writings, facts bend easily. He plays with time, implying conversations that never happened, emotions she never expressed. The pattern is deliberate: retell events just enough to spark debate, then let the audience argue on his behalf. Each revision spreads online, blending memory with speculation until the line between truth and performance disappears. Observers call this tactic narrative migration. It's how high-profile offenders keep influence long after sentencing, by feeding small doubts into a public eager for new twists. In Watts's case, he's turned Kessinger into both scapegoat and symbol, the figure he blames for his fall and the ghost that keeps his story alive. She remains outside the prison, but in his letters, she never leaves. What makes this phase so disturbing isn't the accusation itself, it's the purpose behind it. Each reference to her name pulls attention back to him. Each whisper of conspiracy rekindles interest in a case that should have ended 7 years ago. Even now, his words reach audiences who were once certain of his guilt, quietly asking them to reconsider. And through that manipulation, he achieves the one thing prison was meant to take away: relevance. Yet between the lines, he's crafting something bigger, his redemption story. The redemption story he began writing didn't start with an apology. It started with a Bible. By 2020, staff at Dodge Correctional noticed a new rhythm to Chris Watts' days. He was always among the first to sign up for chapel programs, the last to leave prayer meetings, the inmate who carried a small notebook filled with scripture copied line by line. In his recent letters, he describes himself as a man after God's own heart. For many reading from the outside, it sounds like repentance. But to those familiar with his history, it sounds like strategy. His faith narrative is carefully constructed. He writes about peace, purpose, and living for God, but almost never about accountability. When he speaks of forgiveness, it's always in the passive tense, forgiveness found, not forgiveness sought. The distinction is subtle but telling. It turns redemption into something earned through performance rather than remorse. Inside prison culture, religion carries power. It can protect, elevate, even sanitize. For Watts, it became both shield and spotlight. The man who once hid his secrets behind a suburban smile now hides them behind scripture. He quotes verses about mercy but avoids those about confession. Every passage he shares paints him as someone misunderstood, not responsible, as though his crime were an event that happened to him instead of because of him. Former correctional officers say he fits a pattern they've seen before, inmates who master religious language without ever engaging with its moral weight. Faith becomes a new form of control, an identity they can sculpt, a mask that commands respect. In Watts's case, it also keeps him relevant. Letters from supporters often open with phrases like, "I'm inspired by your faith," rather than questions about his past. He has found a way to transform horror into testimony. Still, those who've encountered him in person describe something harder to categorize. They say he's polite, restrained, and always quoting scripture, but detached, as if empathy itself were foreign territory. He speaks of salvation as a promise already fulfilled, not a process still unfolding. It's a portrait of belief stripped of humility, conviction without confrontation. For the families still grieving, this transformation changes nothing. For the public, it raises an uncomfortable question: can a man who refuses to name his own wrongdoing truly claim redemption?
No.
Whether his devotion is genuine or calculated may never be proven. But every prayer, every sermon he attends, every verse he recites carries the same unspoken purpose: to rebuild the image of a man who cannot be free, but still wants to be admired. Forgiven or not, his earthly punishment remains the same: confinement. Confinement has outlasted everything else: attention, letters, even faith. Inside Dodge Correctional, Chris Watts now lives in a kind of stillness few could survive. The mail that once arrived daily has nearly stopped. Birthdays pass without notice. The phone that used to ring with family voices stays silent. He no longer asks to see anyone because no one schedules a visit. Staff describe him as orderly, predictable, and almost invisible. He eats, works, and returns to his cell without conversation. For years he relied on correspondence and faith groups to give him identity. Now there is only repetition.
I hope that's true. I hope that people have quit writing him. I hope that his family turned their back, but I don't believe it. I don't. His mother, for sure, has not turned her back.
The man who once shaped stories to control the outside world has no audience left to hear them. Silence inside a maximum security facility isn't quiet, it hums. The clang of metal doors, the shuffle of boots, the endless count of hours. For Watts, those sounds have replaced dialogue. Officers say he spends long stretches seated at his desk, staring at blank pages before writing a few lines, then tearing them out. Whatever he's putting on paper rarely leaves the cell. Psychologists call this stage the flattening, when long isolation strips a person of ego and expectation. He is no longer a headline or a warning. He is simply one more inmate serving time no one tracks anymore. That anonymity, once unimaginable for him, has become complete. Outside the walls, public interest has shifted elsewhere. New crimes, new scandals, new villains to dissect. What do
you guys think? Do you think that everything, the public has shifted elsewhere, or do you think we still all are following this case and hoping that we get some resolution with the whole Nicole Kessinger thing? I think she needs to be questioned again. I think she needs to have her day in court. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments.
Once a media storm has settled into a faint echo. Even within the prison, younger officers barely recognize his name. And yet, total silence carries its own danger. For men like Watts, relevance is a kind of oxygen. Deprived of it, they search for new ways to be seen. Each day he remains forgotten, the urge to write returns stronger, letters addressed to no one, drafts of thoughts meant to fill the void left by disappearing voices. He wanted control, now he faces the one thing he can't manipulate, oblivion. But when the world forgets, he writes. When the world stopped listening, he turned to the page. The letters began as quiet reflections, small updates on prison life, simple greetings to strangers who still wrote to him. But over time, the tone shifted. The sentences grew longer, sharper, more deliberate. By 2023, his handwriting carried a new confidence. One letter, now verified and circulated online, contained 5 words that stunned even those who thought nothing about him could surprise them again. I felt no remorse then. That single line pulled his name back into headlines. Commentators debated whether it was a confession, a lie, or something colder, a calculated attempt to stay relevant. Investigators who reviewed the correspondence saw a familiar rhythm, guilt repackaged as insight, horror rewritten as narrative. The man once confined by concrete had discovered a new weapon, storytelling. Each letter offers a slightly different version of the same man. In one, he claims peace through faith. In another, he hints that outside influences clouded his judgment. Sometimes he writes about forgiveness, other times about injustice. It's not repentance, it's revision. Those who've read multiple pages side by side notice the pattern, a constant shifting of blame wrapped in the language of reflection. The mystery isn't how these letters leave Dodge Correctional, it's why they never stop coming. Some reach strangers who later profit from their content. Others appear on forums or in documentaries, feeding an industry built on fascination with the monstrous and the mundane. The effect is cyclical, every new leak revives his name, and every revival gives him reason to keep writing. For criminologists, this behavior has a name: control through narrative. When an offender loses physical power, they turn to language as their last domain of influence. Watts's letters follow that pattern perfectly: calm tone, selective memory, emotional bait for anyone still curious enough to read. He isn't confessing, he's curating. Behind the words lies something even more unsettling: the absence of evolution. The same self-centered phrasing from his early interviews still lives in these pages, just cloaked in new vocabulary. He speaks of redemption but rarely of loss. His reflections circle around his isolation, not the lives that ended because of him. Each paragraph reads like a mirror that never shows the other side. Even so, the public keeps looking. Every new release reignites arguments online, dissected by audiences caught between disgust and intrigue. Some call it proof of spiritual change, others see it as manipulation perfected on paper. But taken together, the letters tell a clearer story than he ever intended, that remorse is not the same as reflection, and that guilt, when managed through ink, can feel like a performance without an ending. And through those letters, we glimpse the metamorphosis of a man who once smiled for family photos.
My daddy is a hero. He helps me grow up strong. He helped me snuggle too. He reads me books. He ties my shoes. If you're a hero, blue and blue, my daddy is love you.
Oh, I love. Doesn't that make you sick? Doesn't Those beautiful girls. Gosh, it's, ugh.
Get up, step back, get on the floor. Hot dog, hot dog, hot dog. It's a brand new way, what you waiting for? Get up.
What is that song he's singing? It's to a cartoon, and I cannot remember for the life of me what it is. If you guys know, let me know in the comments.
Get on the floor. Hot dog, hot dog, hot dog, hot dog. Get up, stretch up, step on the floor. Hot dog, hot dog, hot diggity dog. Hot dog, hot dog, hot diggity dog. Anyway, what you waiting for? Get up, stretch up, get on the floor. Hot dog, hot dog, hot diggity dog. Hot dog, hot dog.
For all accounts, he really did look like a good father until he ran into this woman. That's why I believe that she orchestrated this whole plan, and he was just weak and followed the pussy, I guess.
Diggity dog. Brand new way, what you waiting for? Get up, stretch up, get on the floor. Hot dog, hot dog, hot diggity dog. Hot dog, hot dog, hot diggity dog. It's a brand new way, what you waiting for? Get up, stretch out, get on the floor. Hot dog, hot diggity dog. Hot dog, diggity dog. It's a brand new way, what you waiting for?
Sorry to be putting y'all through this.
Stretch out, get on the floor.
Can't stand seeing him like, ugh.
What, Miss Thompson? Thank
You for the birds
girls. Thank you for the sweet.
Thank you for the food we eat. Thank you for the birds that sing. Thank you, God, for everything. Amen.
Jack, Knuckles.
See, that one.
Okay. Papa, see.
Mommy!
Papa, see my nose hair. Are you ready?
Yeah, go!
Set.
Go!
Are you hanging off that way?
No, she do it.
Alright. Oh, what are you doing?
Hang on, Bella. CeCe.
Pull my pants down, kid. You think I'm made of steel or something? Hey, hold on.
Let's see. Get down. Get all down.
Here, CeCe. CeCe, you want to do it again?
Yeah.
Okay. Watch your toes.
Get mommy.
Give me the phone, CeCe.
I see you, Celeste.
I got the phone.
Huh?
Try to balance yourself out a little more, kiddo.
Bella, don't jump. All right, ready?
Yeah.
Hit it down
Hit
there.
it, Bella. Hard. Hit it hard.
Bend down and hit it. Come on. Oh!
Nice.
I thought she was about to smack him in the face with a hammer.
Nice.
Hit it again.
The letters revealed what was left of him. But to understand why they matter, you have to remember who he was supposed to be. Before 2018, Chris Watts wasn't a name on a headline. He was the neighbor who smiled, the father who filmed bedtime routines, the husband who folded laundry on camera. Every post, every photo, sold the story of stability. He was the modern family man, attentive, humble, safe. That image became his armor, until the week it shattered. When his family vanished in August 2018, the world watched him stand on a suburban porch pleading for their return. The calm in his voice felt rehearsed, the performance too steady. Days later, when the truth surfaced, admiration turned instantly to revulsion. The man praised as a model parent became the most despised figure in America's news cycle. That reversal was more than outrage, it was betrayal. Society trusted him because he looked like everything good men are supposed to be. When that illusion collapsed, it struck a nerve deeper than the crime itself. People saw in him the danger of misplaced faith, how ordinary can hide extraordinary deceit. As details spread, the transformation accelerated. Father of the Year became a headline drenched in irony. His family videos replayed on screens around the world, now stripped of warmth and filled with unease. Every smile looked staged.
What do you guys think? Do you guys think that when he was on camera he acted one way because she was doing that whole Thrive thing and she had to be on Facebook Live a lot, so he had to just look like a great dad? He's wearing super dad shirt. Or do you think that he was like this all the time and just turned evil? I don't know. I'm kind of in the mix of the two. Tell me what you guys think.
Every gentle gesture felt like evidence. Viewers couldn't stop watching, even as it sickened them, a fascination born from disbelief. In court, that disbelief hardened into fury. Cameras captured the man who once played the role of protector, now reduced to silence, eyes fixed downward, expression unreadable. For the public, it wasn't enough to condemn him, they needed to see the myth collapse in real time. He had taken something collective, the belief that love guarantees safety, and broken it. Over the years, his image fossilized into a cautionary symbol. Documentaries, debates, and true crime discussions kept dissecting his every movement. He became more than a criminal, he became a warning, proof that the mask of normalcy can be the most dangerous disguise of all. Today, that contrast still defines him. To some, he's a psychological puzzle. To most, he's the embodiment of trust betrayed, a man who destroyed not only his family but the very faith people place in the idea of family itself. And as the years pass, one truth remains: he will never again be seen as a father, only as the man who made the title meaningless. And yet, even as the world turns away, the algorithm keeps his ghost alive. Even as the headlines fade, his shadow lingers on every screen. In 2025, Chris Watts' story still surfaces, in short clips, reaction videos, recycled documentaries, proof that our fascination with him never really ended. We know.
You guys think it's really fascination with Chris Watts in the case by now? I mean, 7 years later? Or do you think we're still watching and waiting and hoping, like I am, for more evidence or Chris to come out and admit that Nicole Kessinger was involved? I'm sorry I keep saying that, but I am firmly believing that she was totally involved, orchestrated this, and I just pray she sees her day in court.
No longer watch to learn. We watch because we can't let go. There's something in his story that unsettles and attracts us at once. The man who seemed ordinary reminds us that ordinary isn't always safe. He smiled, he blended in, he fooled everyone. And perhaps that's what keeps us here, not the crime itself, but the realization that deception can look familiar. We tell ourselves we watch for understanding, to study warning signs, to protect ourselves from the next tragedy. But our curiosity isn't purely about prevention. It's about reassurance. Each replay reminds us that we are not him, that his choices are unthinkable to us. Watching becomes an act of self-preservation disguised as analysis. Still, with every view, his presence strengthens. Every click resurrects a story that should have ended long ago. The irony is unavoidable: the world condemned him to silence, yet our attention keeps his voice alive. He remains both forgotten and unforgettable, trapped in the cycle of our consumption. True crime has become a mirror for modern morality. We watch because we crave answers, but what we're really looking for is distance, the fragile line separating us from them. We look for signs of evil so we can convince ourselves it's something we'd recognize, something we could never become. But stories like his blur that certainty. They show that darkness doesn't always arrive with warning. Sometimes it wears a wedding ring, drives a family car, and waves to the neighbors. That realization is what keeps us returning, searching for the flaw that makes him different, desperate to believe we'd see it coming. We're still watching because the story never stops reflecting us back to ourselves. The more we study him, the more we reveal about our own need to confront what we fear, that evil isn't a distant force, but a human one. And so, even in silence, he remains visible, not through his words, but through our gaze. We keep watching because we want closure. But deep down, we know there isn't any. Justice ended his freedom. But memory never released him. Chris Watts has served his sentence every day since 2018, not just in confinement, but in the collective mind of a world that refuses to forget. His story no longer lives in court files or prison reports, it lives in the space between outrage and fascination, in the uneasy truth that some stories refuse to die. We say we seek justice to find peace. Yet the more we revisit cases like this, the less peace we find. Justice delivers consequence, memory delivers permanence. Every retelling, every thumbnail, every repost becomes another reminder that the line between ordinary and unthinkable is far thinner than we want to believe. Watts has vanished from the public eye, but his presence remains, not through his own words, but through ours. He became what every society fears most. Proof that evil doesn't always announce itself, that sometimes it comes dressed in kindness, framed by family photos, and hidden behind the most convincing smile. That's why the story still haunts us. Not because it's unsolved, but because it's unforgettable. Because long after the verdict was read, we're still trying to understand how someone could destroy everything they built, and how easily we believed the illusion while it stood. Chris Watts will live out his remaining years behind the same walls that hold countless forgotten names. But his true sentence is different. He exists forever in the world's memory, a man trapped in the story that made him infamous, a story that will never let him fade. And maybe that's the final justice, not silence, but the weight of being remembered for what he tried to hide.
Your Honor, there are no words to adequately describe the unimaginable tragedy that brings us before this court today. By my comments, I'm not even going to try to express the horror, the pain, or the suffering that the defendant has caused to these families, to this community, and to all who were a part of this investigation. However, I do want to spend a few minutes sharing with the court the details of the crime, as so far you've only had an opportunity to review the affidavit and a few facts here and there that have been offered to the court in the motions and pleadings that have been filed. The questions that have screamed out to anyone who will listen since August 13th of 2018 are why and how? Why did this have to happen? How could a seemingly normal husband and father annihilate his entire family? For what? These are the questions that only one individual in this courtroom or on this planet knows the answers to. I fully expect we will not receive the answers to these questions today, nor will we at any point in the future. I don't expect that he will ever tell the truth about what truly happened or why. Even if he did, there is no rational way that any human being could find those answers acceptable responses to such horrific questions. The best we can do is try to piece together some kind of understanding from the evidence that is available to us. And the evidence tells us this. The defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives. Not in a fit of rage, not by way of accident, but in a calculated and sickening manner. Shanann was 34 years old. She had married the defendant in November of 2012. Over the weekend leading up to August 13th, she had been at a work conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and returned home in the early morning hours of August 13th. We know that she got home about 1:45 in the morning. The doorbell camera on their home shows her arriving back home from the airport. Shortly thereafter, at least according to the defendant, they had what he referred to as an emotional conversation about the state of their marriage and about what their lives would look like going forward. What was said during that emotional conversation, only he knows. What we do know is that shortly after that, the defendant strangled her to death with his own hands. We know that he slowly took her life the morning of August 13th. We know that this was not done in an uncontrolled, vengeful manner that he tried to describe to agents from CBI and the FBI. If that were the case, you would expect to see vicious, horrible bruising about her neck, shoulders, and face. You would expect to see the hyoid bone in her neck broken. You would expect to see some kind of defensive wounds on his body as she struggled and fought for her own life. None of those are present. The only injuries that were on Shanann's body were one set of finger or bruising, what appeared to be fingernail or finger mark bruising to the right side of her neck. We know that our experts will tell us that it takes 2 to 4 minutes to strangle someone to death manually with their own hands. The horror that she felt as the man that she loved wrapped his hands around her throat and choked the life out of her must have been unimaginable. Even worse, what must Bella, age 4, and Celeste, age 3, must have experienced or thought as their father, the one man on this planet who was supposed to nurture and protect them, was snuffing out their lives. They both died from smothering. Let me say that again. The man seated to my right smothered his daughters. Why? Imagine the horror in Bella's mind as her father took her last breaths away. Your Honor, understand very clearly, Bella fought back for her life. The frenulum, the connective tissue between her upper lip and her gum, had a centimeter and a half laceration. She bit her tongue multiple times before she died. She fought back for her life as her father smothered her.
Not one tear is coming out of this POS. Ugh. I've seen this before, and I'm sure you guys have too, but it makes me so angry every time I watch it.
Celeste had no such injuries. In fact, she had no external injuries at all. But according to the medical examiner, she was smothered nonetheless. The defendant then methodically and calmly loaded their bodies into his work truck, not in a hasty or disorganized way. He was seen from the neighbor's doorbell camera, backing his truck into the driveway, going back and forth into the house and back out to the truck 3 different times, 1 time for each of their bodies. He then...
Hold up. I thought that they rode alive on the way to the oil fields. Can anybody help me on this? Because I did a whole deep dive video on this, and that's what I thought when I researched the case, that they drove alive and was like, no, Daddy, no. And he smothered them while they watched him bury their mother. That's what I thought. So please, somebody shed some light here.
Drove them away from their family home 1 final time, intent on hiding any evidence of the crimes that he had just committed. In one final sign of callousness for his wife, his daughters, and their unborn son, and their remains, he drove them to a location that he thought no one would ever find them, to one of the oil tank batteries with which he was so familiar. He knew this was safe. He had texted a coworker the night before saying, I'll head out to that site. I'll take care of it. He had carefully ensured that he would be alone in the middle of the plains to secrete away the remains of his family in a place that he hoped they would never be found. In one final measure of disrespect for the family he once had, he ensured that they would not be together, even in death, or so he thought. He disposed of them in different locations. He buried Shanann and Nico in a shallow grave away from the oil tanks. Bella and Celeste were thrown away in the oil tanks at this facility. Different tanks, so these little girls wouldn't be together in death. Imagine this, Your Honor. This defendant took those little girls and put them through a hatch at the top of an oil tank, 8 inches in diameter. Bella had scratches on her left buttocks from being shoved through this hole. A tuft of blonde hair was found on the edge of one of these hatches. The defendant told investigators that Bella's tank seemed emptier than CeCe's because of the sound that the splashes made. These were his daughters.
Oh my gosh. Really? Oh my gosh, this guy is seriously psychotic.
Significantly, when his co-workers arrived at the tank battery later that morning, to a person, they all described him as acting completely normally. It was a normal workday, even while his daughter sank in the oil and water not far away from him. And then his efforts at deception truly began. We've all seen the emotionless interviews that the defendant gives to the local media, asking for help in locating his family. We watched as he claimed that the house was empty without them, and that he hoped that they were somewhere safe, and that he just wanted them to come home. He told investigators that they were at home sleeping when he left for work that morning, and that Shanann had told him that she was taking the girls to a friend's house for the day. What is striking about this case, Your Honor, beyond the horrors that I've already described to you, is the number of collateral victims that he created by his actions. While he stood in front of TV cameras asking for the safe return of his family, scores of law enforcement officers, neighbors, friends and family scoured the area, fretted for their safe return. They texted him begging for any information and sending him their best wishes, all the while he hid what he had done. The list of indirect victims does not end there. Think of the firefighters and the Colorado State Patrol hazmat experts who had to don protective suits and who were called upon to pull Bella and Celeste out of those oil tanks. Or the coroner employees who had to conduct these autopsies. Or the victim assistants who frantically attempted to ease the suffering of those affected. All of this, Your Honor, for what? Why?
Because he was told to by a woman. Ugh, it's disgusting.
Why did this have to happen? His motive was simple, Your Honor. He had a desire for a fresh start, to begin a relationship with a new love that overpowered all decency and feelings for his wife, his daughters, and unborn son. While Shanann texted the defendant over and over again in the days and weeks leading up to her death, attempting to save her marriage, the defendant secreted pictures of his girlfriend into his phone and searched and texted,
All right, I can't watch any more of this. It's just sickening. So I'm going to end the video right here. I'm going to have another update for y'all soon. I know this wasn't much of an update. It's kind of a recap, but I did learn some information that I wanted to share with you guys. And if you can, leave a like for the video and follow. Definitely subscribe, because I'm going to keep bringing you up-to-date news about this whole Nicole Kessinger thing. I know the guy from Behind Criminal Minds has a 50-page document that he is going to be turning over to the DA. I think it's that guy right there too, the one talking, because something is going on with his role. And on the anniversary, on 2026, on August 18th, on the anniversary of their deaths, he's going to submit this document to try and get Nicole Kessinger to be indicted or get the case relooked at. And rumor has it that it's already silently being relooked at and that the police files have been pulled. So until next time, guys, take care of each other, and always trust your gut. Alright guys, I'm out. Bye.